Welcome back to the Fandom Fighters podcast. I am Fern.
And I'm Toby. I'm introducing myself today.
And today we have a special guest. Everybody welcome Stella from Stone Dragon Crafts. Hello, Stella.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. We've been talking about doing this episode for like a month now, or this batch of episodes really. And I'm super excited because the first 4 we recorded are all very dramatic. It's all about like the background drama of fandom stuff, but there's a good side to fandom too.
Yeah.
And when I approached you to talk about, because I knew you were fan of things.
Fan of things, yes.
You specifically were like, I love troll hunters so much. Let's do episodes about that. I was like, okay, perfect. It was perfect way to get into it. So yeah, that's a little spoiler about what we're talking about today. I don't know, Stella, would you like to talk about what you're talking about today?
Sure. I have a very hard time trying to just even find where to begin about it. As far as the Troll Hunters series and all of the Tales of Arcadia is concerned, I feel like I'm almost indoctrinating people to it, because every time somebody's like, I don't have anything to watch, and I'm like, oh well, I have a suggestion for you. I've also been trying to get my partners into it. One of them, which that we will just switch off episodes because he wants me to watch Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans. And so we'll keep going one episode after another. And I'm like, no, you'll have to get this Troll Hunters one. And with the movie coming up next month, I've told him we need to step up our watching game.
And now's a perfect time to do this podcast too.
Right, exactly. So, and that way people can also feel like they can binge something that's completely done, because it's right there. It's nearly complete with the movie coming up next month, which I am very stoked for, by the way. It became one of my favorite shows about roughly 3 years ago, and it's really hard to remember whether or not all 3 seasons were released by the time I binged it, but I had definitely, just got sucked right into it. And then I did not know about the second installment of the series for Tales of Arcadia, 3 Below, until probably late 2019 or early 2020, because then I jumped right into going, binging those episodes. And to talk a little bit about the Tales of Arcadia, you have it in 3 sets. It's Troll Hunters, 3 Below, and then Wizards. And they all make up one, large universe. And 3 Below is the sci-fi aspect that comes into this. It's married with magic very, very well. And it's just chef's kiss of science fiction and fantasy and how well they can work together. Coming back to Troll Hunters, because that's the first series that people would have to watch. In the beginning, it just right off the bat, you're thrown into a fight that's just out of sight of humanity, but so close that you're questioning how in the world people are not seeing it. You're seeing the initial troll hunter fighting off the son of the evil bad guy there. His name is Bular. And you then see him sacrifice himself and turn to stone. So now you've understood that trolls can't walk around in the daylight. And just in the first few moments, you're already getting thrown into world building. The pacing doesn't miss a beat, juxtaposing ordinary and extraordinary, and it just keeps throwing in where fantasy intersects with mundane really well, because then you're moved into meeting Jim and his best friend, trying to just get to school and not be late. So you go from one epic fight to just kids being kids.
Can't believe I've never heard of this.
I have watched a little bit of this with my kids, and in the background, I never really paid much attention to it. I thought it was interesting, but I never really paid too much attention to it. I just knew it was safe for kids to watch, so I put it on for them. And
for sure.
I didn't know there was a character named Toby in it.
Yes,
nice.
That makes sense. Yeah, I love any stories that can mix modern world with fantasy ideas.
Absolutely.
Urban fantasy is the best niche.
Yeah, it's very
so good.
I'm probably alone in this, but I like that movie with Will Smith and the orc guy. I think Will Smith's in that, right? Dark? No,
he
Light?
is, yeah.
Light?
No, what is it
Bright?
called? Yeah,
Bright.
It's that.
That's what it is.
I couldn't get past it. There was a lot of writing things that I would definitely I could go into another hole too, but the concept of it was very good.
It was a very cool concept, and that's, for me, a lot of times concept is the big seller, because I can I can make my own interpretations of what's going
Yeah.
on.
Mhm.
But it's that urban fantasy setting just reminded me of that movie. And it's like definitely completely different audiences for the two things, but
Yeah.
you
I
know,
would,
there
if we're going through the urban fantasy vein here, I would definitely compare Troll Hunters to Percy Jackson.
Okay. I
excellent.
love Percy Jackson.
I've heard a lot
Yes,
of good things about the
Yeah.
books.
that's another
Not as
fandom I'm deep in.
many good
Nice.
things about the movies, but I've heard the movies are pretty okay.
We don't believe
They're
in
Yeah.
those. We have a
ok
tradition of not watching those.
okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah. Even the author of Percy Jackson is like, we don't talk about the films.
excellent.
There is
Okay,
a
that's
musical for that plug of anybody that's also a Percy Jackson fan. Go look up the musical on
oh,
Spotify. It's dope. And
it's on Spotify. Okay.
yeah, the musicals, all of the album is on Spotify. But it's very similar to Percy Jackson in the vein that you'll get your chosen hero, and you of course have the love interest, best friend, and there's the magical ordained quest, right? And I feel like what a lot of urban fantasy, especially YA and coming of age stories, kind of have a problem towing is that line of reality. Like, at what
Right.
point do the adults start to wonder what's going on, and
Right.
I feel like Percy Jackson did very well with that particular part of it, and that reality that the parents already knew that their kids were demigods, and that in Troll Hunters there is actually a progression of when the adults become involved.
It's
And
really
Oh.
good.
they have just very realistic and believable parts in the story all through season 1, 2, and 3, where things become close calls. You've really got parents that are concerned, or parents that are just very much in the dark. Like Toby's grandma is legally blind, and she doesn't notice that there's a troll living with them because
Gosh.
of it. And it creates good comic relief, but you have to wonder, how blind is this woman and why is she allowed to drive? And
Yeah.
um so that's one of the comic relief portions of it, but Jim's mom is actively involved and tries to figure out what's going on. And it kind of shows teen angst from a different perspective, where it is frustrating for the parent and they're trying to actively do things, and deciding you shouldn't even use teen angst, but just rather that the poor guy is like burnt out because he's trying to live two lives. But it kind of like one of the biggest themes in there is actually parent and child dynamics and relationships, as well as when to ask for help. And
Oh,
so,
that's good. I'm glad that we've got a whole little section about like all the very positive outlooks that
yeah,
this series has, and like I didn't even think about it until just now. I was like, this is like he's a high schooler, right?
yeah, he's in high school.
Okay, so he's
Mhm.
in high school, and then he fights trolls overnight, um, because the trolls only come out at night, right? That's the gist of it. Or does
Yes.
he? Is there like when does
So
he
the
sleep?
gist,
Does he sleep?
that's actually, it's very well covered in there. It really kind of shows that he doesn't get a whole lot of rest. There's a lot of episodes that really kind of highlight, hey Jim, you're exhausted, you should take a break, kind of moments. But basically, the mantle of Troll Hunter is this passed on mantle or responsibility, and it is anytime a previous Troll Hunter dies, the amulet picks a new one. It was made back when there was this war between two warring parts of trolls that kind of wanted to, live in peace amongst humans, not so much amongst them, but just, like side by side, like we'll do us, you do you. And these other ones called the Gum Gums that are the evil ones that wanted to take over the world, create this eternal night, so to speak, and just raise it all to the ground kind of deal.
Yeah,
And so
that's
Merlin,
interesting.
yeah, so Merlin created the amulet and so on. There's a lot of the world building that went into that one.
Oh, like King Arthur Merlin.
Yes, like King Arthur
Oh,
Merlin.
okay.
Oh.
Um, does
So does this? Oh, go ahead, Toby.
I just wanted to ask a really stupid question,
There's
as
no
I
such thing.
usually as I no, here, get ready. Uh, does the amulet follow Santa Claus rules, or is it preordained? Like, is the next person who finds it becomes a troll hunter? Like they put on the Santa suit to become the next Santa? Do you know what I'm talking
No,
about? Is
it's
that
Yeah,
it's
the
preordained.
okay?
It's preordained. No, that's not a dumb
like
question, but that's useful terms for me now. I've never heard of that.
That
the movie where he accidentally kills Santa. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it's actually like really specific. It's like a weird thing, but it's a very specific type of like
That's
magical
definitely a trope.
contract.
That's a
Yeah.
trope name I've never heard, and I'm writing it down.
It's a
And
good. I love
yeah,
it. I use it in
Yeah.
D&D stuff pretty often, so get ready for that.
Oh no, this is
Um,
very much preordained. There's actually several lines from Merlin himself when he comes back into the picture where he says, "My amulet does not make mistakes."
Ooh.
you know what? I love Merlin. I want to take a little
He's
break
such a
with
good
this.
plot. Yeah.
You just completely reminded me that there's a book series about young Merlin and how he doesn't exist in time anymore, basically. Like
That
he
is
Whoa.
just
honestly, yeah, that's honestly kind of the trope that he falls into in Troll Hunters too.
because there's in the Young Merlin series, which I'm gonna go back and read now that it just dredged this out of my high school memories from like 20 years ago. But like
You're welcome.
young Merlin is such an interesting character because like he goes blind and then learns magic to see. Like he doesn't see with his eyes; he just sees with magic.
Whoa.
Um, but uh essentially like at some point in the series he meets himself from the future and old Merlin's like, yeah, like check out this sweet Honda Civic I have or something. I don't remember, that's just like how I remember it, but he's like, yeah, I got a car in my tower because I don't fuck with time like you do.
Wow.
But I love
That's
that
not what I was expecting you to say.
the wizard out of time is a very good trope.
Love that. So
Yeah.
does this series, it sounds like it takes a little bit from like Arthurian legend, but does it also take from like Nordic mythology or what are the
Kind of the inspirations.
yeah.
So what I noticed were inspirations was definitely Proto-Germanic and Celtic stuff out of
Mm,
it. Now that's the initial watch through in Troll Hunters. You will see Arthurian stuff when you get to Wizards because
okay.
that's I don't want to really give spoilers, but there are trailers for it out there. People want to watch it, but Wizards is my favorite because it does actually take place in Arthurian times for a portion of the
Whoa.
series.
Oh,
And
very cool.
I love Arthurian stuff. I am such a nerd for it. You can sell me on anything, pretty much just promising me I'll see something about King Arthur. And um, so the really it comes down to like any old folk tales you would have known about trolls being made of stone, can't walk around in daylight, living underground. The bridge, there's definitely bridge allegories used. Bridges
Nice.
were supposed to be the borders between human and troll worlds. One of the biggest battles that is pretty much the core part of the conflict in the show is the Battle of Killahead Bridge. And there's a lot of conspiracy that follows the bridge and its construction and where it leads to in the Darklands where the Gum-Gums are locked away. And it just, like I said, it's really just incredible how they took a lot of myth and just kind of removed it from its source material and made it something their own.
That's super interesting. And like you said, the
Yeah.
Darkland, so it kind of like that that gets me thinking like a lot of Nordic and Slavic stuff, like you said.
Yeah.
With the trolls, like literally the ice trolls being or like I mean troll and giants kind of like interchangeable in some,
Right.
Oh yeah.
you can
There's
swip and swap around.
my favorite piece of world building, I'm not gonna lie, is that they have these trolls that actually are canonically in Florida, and they're called quagawumps. And me being a native Floridian, I was like, that would explain a lot of Florida man nonsense right there.
That's
Honestly.
excellent. And I kind of want to go back and talk about bridges because, like, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard it a long time ago because in Arthurian stuff, there's also like some like bridge magic, and it's not. I want to say it's not like super covered. It's just kind of like, yeah, bridge is kind of fucked up. It's just because bridges are hard to build. It's like
Yeah. Oh
a
yeah.
lot of the magic comes from like common folk who are like, how the fuck do you guys do this? Like this shit's magic.
So for my Arthurian stuff, yeah, especially it's just magic. I was rereading Le Morte d'Arthur. I'm going through like reading over it because I'm trying to look for I am writing my own out of time Arthurian tale, and I was seeking inspiration. And I really came to the conclusion that anything that happens is Merlin's fault.
Yeah, that's fair. No, that's fair. It's always
Yeah.
usually a wizard.
Other things, it's literally, and I don't know if anybody else here also listens to Tim on Hello Future Me, but he has this saying through all of his videos on YouTube and it for his writing critiques, and it's like, don't do something like a wizard did it, and he'll pan to this image of Gandalf doing something.
Listen, we can talk about Gandalf in another episode because he's not technically a wizard. He's
True.
he's more in line with being an angel and or a cleric.
Of
Um,
course.
that's just the wizard thing. He doesn't even use a book. Like that's the main. He reads a book and some scrolls, but wizards
To
use
be
books.
fair, I do believe he refers to himself as a wizard, but
Yeah, he
I'm
does.
pretty sure he knows he's not really a
He
wizard.
also he talks about like a lot of it, we're very sidetracked into the Gandalf zone,
Uh-huh.
but like he also says a lot of bullshit just all the time.
Yeah,
Like I
he's
Really,
just up in
all of
there
things,
lying.
all of the things could just be explained with a wizard did it, and that's
Mhm.
really just Arthurian legend to begin with. It's just a wizard did it.
Yeah,
It's oh, you Merlin dressing up like a vagabond, tricking us again, you old scamp.
excellent.
Gosh
So
dang wizards.
uh so how many all right, I want to ask some questions about the breakdown of these three series in the universe.
Okay.
Um Are they or is each one like a contained season, or do they have seasons within each series?
So to better make sure I understand your question just enough, let me bring up another series while we're here that's also controversial. You know how the DC universe and TV shows like Arrow and Flash kind of
The
overlapped a little
Arrowverse.
bit?
Yes, I
Yeah,
love
the
it.
Arrowverse where
I
they had some episodes overlap,
uh
but you couldn't get through one season without spoiling the other
Yes.
to the other series. So in Troll Hunters and the Tales of Arcadia as a whole, they did a very good job having episodes overlap with each series without actually spoiling how the other one goes, right? So
Hmm.
you are technically supposed to watch Troll Hunters, then Three Below, then Wizards, because the literal ending of Three Below is the first episode of Wizards. You start the very last 5 minutes is the 5 minutes to Wizards essentially,
That's
and
I
yeah,
love that.
it's
That's good.
it's
That's
beautiful
very good.
transition.
That's
Yeah,
very
Very
good.
that's
beautiful transition.
excellent.
So now the transition between Troll Hunters and Three Below, however, is a lot like Arrowverse because they didn't have the green light for Three Below, to my understanding, prior to. So
Mm.
they threw a pilot episode in the middle of Troll Hunters where they introduced two characters. And anybody who would be a watcher at this point would know which episode I'm talking about, where two teenagers who act very strange, and as if they are out of place, talking about, just about anything, quantum physics and things as if everybody else in this world should know. Like, don't you know that the bolt of lightning is however many gigawatts? Yeah, I can't remember the actual like measurement they gave, but it was like out there and accurate. and
That you know what
and
people
it's
people I'm sorry. I gotta get
oh,
this out
you're
before
you're good.
my brain forgets it. People told me that Three Below was kind of like Symbiotic Titan, where there's like they're not they're like teens, but they're not teens. In Symbiotic Titan, they're like alien teens. I don't know
Yes.
if either of you watched that one. It's like it's kind of like a cult classic
That one I haven't
cartoon.
watched. I've not. I will have to now because you've
You
you've given me the comparison for Three Below, but Three Below is definitely alien teenagers, and they
okay?
they crash landed on Earth. Well, they were roughly directed to Earth after their planet was um going through a coup, and
That's
they're part of the royal family.
that's the plot to Symbiotic Titan.
Oh,
It's,
okay.
but they
All
fight
Interesting.
in
right.
a giant robot, so I don't know if they fight in a giant robot in Three Below.
To my understanding, because he's giant, yes, but
No,
not
oh,
not
well,
robot, not robot, but
okay.
giant. And so
He's,
so that's
oh,
part of how that kind of tied in. So they really married the sci-fi and fantasy together, where bits of Troll Hunters did end up in Three Below. So basically, they entered the scene in Troll Hunters around kind of the start of that episode, right? And then there's an episode in Three Below where they actually interact with all of the Troll Hunter squad. And because there's this amnesia type loop that keeps going on with those characters, they don't actually remember interacting with them as aliens.
huh, okay. It's super interesting. I
So
Yeah.
the end, yeah. So the end of season one in Three Below is actually the end of season three Troll Hunters,
wow, okay.
Interesting.
It's
and
this is very a much more interwoven universe, which makes sense with del Toro. I
Guillermo,
can't say it. Guillermo
Guillermo.
Guillermo del Toro. Um, my Michigan accent comes through with mispronouncing words all the time. Uh, he always does crazy shit like this, where
Yeah.
there's so much going on, and you have to watch it a bunch of times to get it all. Um, like with Pan's Labyrinth, I mean, there's so much like uh allegory in that movie.
Hmm.
It's nuts. Um,
I very much want to watch Pan's Labyrinth, but every time I've tried to sit down and do it, I have this like distracted type personality. I always have to be like doing something at the same time, and I have to read those subtitles, so I always have to be in the mood and prepared to watch it. and
Yeah.
I need to sit through it because I very much want to. But
I
it's
I highly recommend watching it in Spanish.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. I don't want to watch
it's
the dub of that.
the dub of it is like it's
Yeah,
well done, but it's not good, if that makes sense.
right. No, it
Um,
They
totally
tried their
does.
best, but they didn't quite succeed, and that's
Yeah,
exactly it. I don't want to. Yeah, I want to watch it in Spanish, and that's again, I have to just sit down and read the subtitles, which is not a huge ordeal for me. It's just a matter of focus.
yeah. That's why I end up not being able to watch as much anime as I would like, because I'm not gonna watch an anime dub. No offense to dubs, they're just not for me. But my little ADHD brain is like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll watch this anime. Let me read the subtitles, and then I'll pull my phone up and I'll be like, why can't I understand what they're saying? Oh,
Yeah,
right.
I'm like, I'm inferring somehow that I've just suddenly learned Japanese and I'm gonna, pay attention. I try to read the subtitles, go back to what I was doing, read again, if hopefully the end of a sentence was clear. But no, I can't do it. I always hope.
as someone who's learning Japanese and watches a lot of subbed anime, it the dub, even the subtitles aren't super accurate to what they're actually saying. They
Yeah.
localize things, and it makes
Oh
sense.
yeah.
But I do want to say the one anime that I think is dubbed well, and I'm probably going to get crucified for this, but I really like My Hero Academia's
Honestly, yes, it is.
dubbing.
I love that.
They get all the character they went out of their way to do extra like on brand character voices, like people.
Bakugo.
Bakugo is perfect, and then Ingenium, um
Yes.
Ida is such a good like nerd.
Yeah, no, all of
It's
them are
so
just
good.
they're voiced so well, and the colloquialisms that they use in English are just perfect
Yeah,
for the lines that they're trying to deliver. Because when you're trying to watch it in Japanese, you're obviously getting a vastly different kind of vocabulary than what you're receiving in English, but you get the same conveying that they technically would in Japanese, which is really nice.
yeah, it's very
I'm gonna
nice.
check out that dub. I actually haven't watched that anime at all.
It
It's
is so
super good.
good. Highly
It's super good.
recommend.
I might do a watch party just in this Discord at some point. I want
Yeah,
to do more bonding stuff to make podcasting easier, especially with the big group D&D project. It'll make things a lot
If
smoother if we had some
if
team building
ever
stuff.
either of you
yeah,
want to watch Troll Hunters, I'm here for it. Like I said, I'm like
Excellent.
building a cult of
absolutely.
it. Like, come to us. We have a very quiet fandom. It's chill here. We all have discussion.
I could use
S-
a quiet fandom, as listeners of the podcast would probably know.
Speaking of fandom stuff, I did my solemn duty and had to check out the Forbidden Rule for Troll Hunter stuff, and
No, I
there's
don't
stuff
do
out
that.
there, and I knew there would be, and I was like, I just wanted to check in to see to make sure people there wasn't like some weird curse on the show, because if there wasn't stuff out there and the Forbidden Rule, um, I would be very suspect. Like I would be like, there's somebody building this fandom from the outside, um, because there's nothing there. We this is generally a show about fandom drama. There's nothing. I've looked. I've been looking since we started talking about it. It's like, did somebody like say something mean to somebody in the fandom one time? It's like probably maybe, but it was they solved the problem on their own. They didn't create
It
false identities and pretend to be their
right.
own nanny
There's
and then
no
Yeah,
write.
big forum breakdowns. There's no big discordance between everybody. We all generally fall on the same plane of understanding. It's very strange, I have to tell you, because I actually watched the show with an ex-boyfriend, and he and I were pretty much in the same thought processes for every episode. And, every time I've shown it to a friend, they're like, oh my God, this is really good. And there's not a whole lot of holes in the writing except for one big thing that's really in agreement with the whole fandom anyway.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
will say this is like genuinely the first time I've heard of a fandom that doesn't have any like niche problematic clusters of people at all.
And,
God, I don't know. It's a miracle I found it.
Yeah,
there
that's really
probably
cool.
just the way that the internet works, there probably is, and they probably just keep to
Yeah,
themselves, which is a nice thing. As long as
yeah,
do your own thing on your own time and don't involve other people, because there are fanfics out there. I looked into that too, and there's both the like, oh, I want to make my own story in this universe, and the horny fanfics.
right.
Oh
I was
yeah,
Um,
of
gonna
course.
ask about the fan fiction culture of Troll Hunter.
If I was a teenager, I would be able to answer that question better. But I fell out of writing fan fiction probably late 2015, and to be quite frank with you, the last time I wrote fan fiction, probably just dabbles of what I did with Red versus Blue, just for the sake of writing, like exercising my writing and comedic skills, and
Right.
that's it. And I fell out of really following fan fiction, like reading it, probably when I graduated high school, first couple years of college, I should say. I'm 28 now, if that gives anybody
Mhm.
the kind of gist of time frame I'm giving here.
Right.
So I kind of
I
just stay off of fan fiction forums now.
I'm looking at Archive of Our Own. Um,
Excellent.
just looking up Tales of Arcadia, there are 2,423 works.
Okay.
So that's a decent amount. The last one
Yeah.
was edited and released today.
Nice.
There's two released today, two released yesterday. And it's pretty solid. People are still going at it, so
Okay.
people are going. So when I'm gonna look at ratings, the general audience ratings 1,075. Teen and up audience is 866. Not rated 192. So that's Wild West. Who knows what's going on there? There are 188 mature. So I would assume like I don't know. I'm not into the rating concepts.
Are we back to the citrus scale?
Yeah,
Yeah,
this might.
it's comparable. Like I think explicit would be like a lemon
Yeah,
by
that's
today's standard.
so there's 188 mature and then 102 explicits.
Which is like the biggest difference I've ever seen in general audiences versus explicit, but it makes sense because this is, these characters are minors and this is a
Exactly.
show mostly
Yeah.
made for kids, so that's good.
And in the warnings, it's actually interesting because I don't know. This is actually my first time looking at Archive of Our Own, and I love the system
Wow.
already.
It's so
But
good.
it's very good. If I can figure it out, it's really good. So the first one is no archive warnings apply. It's 1449, 1,449 for people that aren't ADHD. Uh, so there's no
Up.
warnings. They're just like, hey, this is just a story. There's nothing bad in it.
Okay.
Creator chose not to use archive warnings, which Wild West, who knows what's going on. 650 of those. 295 graphic depictions of violence. So like less than a tenth of these works
Yeah.
have graphic violence. Major character death is 189,
Mm.
and then some super no-no stuff underneath it.
Yeah, but
Totals up
not
to
that many.
not many. It's only 46 and 43. So it's like 1%, less than 1%.
This is also, I'm also now looking at AO3.
Mhm.
One of a rare fandom where the main pairings are majority male female.
Yeah, I was just got to look at that.
So a lot of the characters themselves can be pretty much canonically heterosexual, right? From what
Mm.
you can see, and there's really no indications to having any characters that would probably sway in any gay direction.
Right.
There were in a few offhanded scenes. There was one where I saw two girls together, and I'm trying to recollect whether or not it was the end of Three Below or in the middle. I can't really remember. I just remember that the world was about to end, and then suddenly somebody got a girlfriend, and it was a girl, and because
Nice.
they made like a wish about it, and
That's
it's
cute.
it's like an office. Yeah, it's a support character that you like never hear the name of ever, but it's somebody that's consistently like in the background.
Right.
And then so there is one character in here, and I don't want to say who it is unless if there are would-be watchers and spoil something, but there is somebody that I would say is canonically bi in my opinion, because he's very much attracted to women within the first few series because he's across all three of them, and then in the last one he sees Lancelot and he's like, oh, he's so dreamy, and I was like, are you bi?
Well, I mean, at that point, yeah, he's got to be, right? That's
Right, exactly. I was just like, I am pretty thrilled about this. This could either be vain because you look like him, or it's because you genuinely value men,
it's you got to take your wins where you can get them.
Right, exactly. So I'm just
Yeah.
like, maybe. So like, there's not. Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of in the LGBTQ representation in this show, but I didn't really hear a whole lot about the arguments of shipping either.
That was going to be my next question. Like, is there like a general consensus in the fandom of like the pairings?
Yeah, the pairing for like the main pairing between Jim and Claire, which you would automatically know that they're each other's love
Right.
interests, is actually fairly realistic for teen romance, in my
Right.
opinion. Throwing them at each other and trauma bonding
Yeah,
them, you
which
know what I
happens
mean?
so much in like teen chosen one media.
Yeah.
It's super interesting that you don't. I mean, in a lot of modern stuff, you do see like characters that hold over, um, like their feelings about stuff, especially in, like Steven Universe. That they have through lines for a lot of the characters and like background characters, and it, growing up, a lot of like even like Samurai Jack was very good at it, but there's a lot of other like serious series that would just like reset because that was like what worked, right? It's like the Simpsons um style of creating cartoons where each one has to stand alone on its each episode has to be funny on its own without calling back to other episodes.
Right.
And it's such a weird thing to say, but like Family Guy is such a weird one for breaking that rule. And I'm not like a huge Family Guy fan. I think there's some funny stuff in it, and it, there's a lot of like extremely problematic stuff in it.
Oh yeah.
But
Side note,
You
I've
can't
been
see
doing
it, but I'm nodding.
yeah, I've been doing sort of a deep dive in preparation for a future episode on the Family Guy fandom and like especially the modern like Gen Z Family Guy fandom, and it is fascinating.
yeah,
So
it's wild. But yeah, like seeing more shows, especially serious series like this one, where the character like he has to keep making up to the parents after trashing their house. And it's not just like, oh, you're dating our daughter now, everything's cool. It's like, hey,
yeah,
fucko, why'd you mess up my house that one time? Uh,
yeah,
there's
nice that
this is a very consistent story. Like I'm impressed, honestly. Like I hope to only write something this cohesive one day. Because there's so many things that are good callbacks to each other. Like it's not even just that each episode in its own is a standalone, like good on its own kind of thing. It has drawbacks to sometimes even the first episode. There are recurring quotes actually across each season to each series.
ooh, I
wow,
love a recurring quote.
it's good
There's like
stuff.
3 of them. It's fantastic.
That's excellent.
So let's cover. You've got 6 things listed here, which are all the pros that you have for the series. Let's go through 'em. We kind of covered the third one, the parent-child relationship dynamics. Let's go through them
Yeah.
all and just we'll pick out some points so you can without spoiling anything. I guess
Oh
one
yeah,
of
I
them,
can do
like
that.
yeah. Let's pick out some points and talk about those because I'm interested to see how they tackle a lot of these
So
in universe.
So positive masculinity was one of the things that I definitely noted, and I was actually rewatching like the first couple episodes last night, trying to like drum up the feelings to put forth to these notes too. But the positive masculinity one is it actually showcased a lot of masculine characters doing what are traditionally not masculine things. Jim likes cooking. Like he enjoys thoroughly like just actually cooking and helping his mom. That's a part of that parent-child dynamic thing. But he cooks for his mom, his friends, just really enjoys that and being in that kind of caretaker role. And Blinky, his mentor, also now he's like that nerdy type, but he's very supportive. He's very positive. He doesn't train Jim with this like I'm going to, like beat you to the ground and make you a whole new person, like make a man out of you style. It's actually building on things that Jim is good at. He does try to use like positive affirmations when he's training Jim in the oh man, what's it called? Blanking on the troll hunters training area. Ooh, it'll come back to me later, I'm sure of it. But it also shows that there's and this kind of blends in with the blended family struggles, which is my second point. There's several different families that are explored, not necessarily with the same depth as each other, but kind of coinciding in the series. There's a student whose stepdad is the gym coach, and you see them struggle in the school and outside of the school. And you see that gym coach try to be a more positive masculine figure to him when apparently his dad was very explosive and angry. It's implied that that child's dad was like that. And just kind of breaking down that boundary there. and actually having that kind of conversation where for somebody like myself, I actually have two step parents or had two step parents growing up. I had my stepfather and my stepmom. Both parents had divorced. So it was nice to see something like that portrayed. I'm like, it would have been nice.
Yeah, it's super
uh,
nice. I love that. Especially like specifically like the coach dad, like
yeah.
being like a softer masculine role model, if possible. I don't know if that's the actual dynamic that they follow on that, but
They definitely
um,
try. They very much imply that the coach is a big softy despite being a hard ass in the
yeah,
school.
that's
And
that's that's the
yeah.
thing that I like the most about that kind of, especially like any coach character. If they're like actually like super nice with it, it's like their job to be the coach and get things done. Like showing that the difference in and out of that, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is because Jim's dad did walk out, he has technically two father figures at the beginning of the series, and he does end up with one of those particular figures being more prominent than the other due to a betrayal. But there is another figure of his that's again a more knowledgeable masculine figure as a teacher versus, like I don't know, I'm trying to even think, just like again another hard ass kind of coach, like, oh, I'm gonna train you until, you can't walk no more type of deal. He
Right.
doesn't do that until way later on after some other stuff there, but it kind of shows where that could come into play.
Shout out to helpful teacher dads, especially
Yeah.
the one from Stranger Things, the science
Oh my
teacher.
god,
He's
yes.
so good. That him being a nerd and just unapologetically following his shit and just doing what he
That's definitely
wants,
Blinky. Blinky's the
it's very
unapologetic
good.
nerd.
Perfect.
And so the gradual redemption arcs is that, and now I think I've explained this to my roommate before too, when we're talking about redemption arcs and characters, nothing will ever compare to Zuko. Nothing will
No.
ever come close to what Zuko had like accomplished over all of the Avatar series. But I
Oh,
would
true.
put one of the characters in probably the top 5 for mine in this show as far as redemptions,
Wow.
because you go from hating his ass in the first season of Troll Hunters to, oh my god, he's totally endearing by wizards.
It was
Excellent.
already sold on this, but this the redemption arc and like evil character joining the friend group, or at least being a little more sympathetic later on, is
Oh
like,
yeah.
ugh, I
I
live
wouldn't
for
even
that.
I wouldn't even call him evil. I would just call him a minor antagonist. And he's the
Mm,
he's the ordinary antagonist. He's a school bully.
okay,
So he's
interesting.
yeah, and then you've also got another one where there is somebody that kind of starts out as this rival figure. And then that rivalry ends after Jim beats him in a particular skirmish. And I wouldn't even say like beats like, oh man, he just kind of wipes the floor with him. He doesn't really do
Right.
that, but he definitely wins his pride, and he then becomes kind of this low-key frenemy to friend. And
Love that.
that one's very satisfying. It's very sad in the end, but it's very satisfying. And my one of my favorite ones out of this list is the examples of respecting boundaries and recognizing other people's limitations. There is a character, and it's always a callback, excuse me, about how he looks to how he actually acts. He is a hulking brute, but he is a pacifist. And it becomes very clear to see when he's playing video games with Toby, the secondary main character.
I love playing video games. That's like
Right.
all I do.
So Toby is also big into video games in this series, and
I think they all are.
right.
I haven't talked to any Toby that isn't, and I've only talked to like 2 other ones. So I mean, it's a big pool already.
It's all just the stats don't lie. And
Mhm.
but Toby's big into video games, and he gets this particular character to play with him. But it becomes very clear when they're playing a fighting game that he's very triggered, almost in a PTSD type of way. And Toby immediately recognizes it, doesn't get mad at him when the controller breaks out of that particular fit that he has, and says, you know what? I have a better game we can play. And he goes to this thing that's called Go Go Sushi, and it's just making sushi orders. It's like a cooking game, and it's so peaceful, and it's so wholesome to watch him, instead of getting mad at somebody, getting triggered, attending to their needs and moving forward.
Yeah, that's such an important representation in like a kid show that I feel like I've never really seen in anything else.
It's so
Yeah,
hard to capture it in a way that
Yeah.
doesn't kind of drum up too much drama. And that particular scene was all characterization. It wasn't a fight with a big bad guy where you would have been like, well, that was kind of contrived, or that didn't really feel like it worked well. This was them acting on their own.
Right.
There's a quote that makes me think of, and I don't know what this quote is from, but heard it on TikTok and I really liked it. I don't know. I really want to know who this quote is from. I'll look that up, and I'm saying it right now. But the quote is, "You can't truly call yourself peaceful unless you're capable of great violence. If you're not capable of violence, you're not peaceful. You're harmless."
Hmm.
Um,
Well, that's definitely this character, if I should say
y-
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big. It's just a quote that I love. I don't know. There's just something about it.
Evocative.
It's
Makes you
very
think.
It
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
That it to talk in D&D terms, because I'm going to start doing that more as we get more ramped up into production on our D&D podcast. It's just like that's the monk class in general in
Mm.
D&D, where it's like I know I can kick the shit out of you. I don't have to. It's
Right.
I don't have to prove the point to know that I can.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like I can just literally just disable you instead of killing you, so I'm going to do that instead. Uh so I love that character trope of the pacifist who's like, actually, I'm technically like a war criminal, like Uncle
I
Iroh
was
from
gonna
Oh
say
my
Uncle
god.
Iroh. Yeah.
I
yeah,
would I would definitely not put that character into the category of Iroh or even in the monk, right? He's just that he was recruited by the Gum Gums at some point in his life and then he turned away from that. And so he actively chooses to not fight. And it becomes very clear that he finally grapples with, okay, there are times that fighting is appropriate because I'm defending people that I love.
yeah.
That's really good.
That's like a big modern thing that like people are kind of coming to terms with too. Uh, but we'll not really get into that too much. But that's like that's where I heard it on TikTok, was like somebody was basically saying that, and they're at a protest, and that was the whole end of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, which was a great plot point and theme that was very much recurring through the show, but it does tie into the next thing that I will also break down into. And that's the one thing I think that collectively as a fandom everybody would agree with. That the show definitely tries to make it a huge point to say that asking for help from your friends is not a sign of weakness or even relying on your family or your loved ones, whomever is your support group. There are plenty of episodes where Jim tries to go it alone, and then he ends up having to rely on his friends, who he also refers to as troll hunters, even though technically he is the only troll hunter by title. And there are episodes like that with Claire, where, at some point she finally breaks down and asks for help for stuff. Toby and her have an entire episode dedicated to them trying to figure out how to get along better for the sake of Jim and the entire team. And they help each other grow at that point. Now the biggest thing out of the 3 seasons, and actually it does bleed into Wizards a little bit, and I'm interested in seeing if the movie reconciles this. Not going too far into the weeds to expose spoilers, but breaking it down, the fairly common trope of many protagonists is learning when to accept help from others and not isolating themselves. There's a number of times in the series that Jim is told to shoulder his destiny as the troll hunter alone. And this is explicitly said to him in many occasions. And that he should, forego his connections to others that are only going to get hurt because of him. Each time he does this, he ultimately fails and realizes it's okay to lean on the loved ones for support. However, there are instances, again, surrounding this where he clearly has learned in other group activities he's done with these folks, I should be able to rely on my friends, point blank and simple. And it's a flaw that's ultimately left unresolved by the end of season 3. And there's one big end point that I can't get into here because again, it would be a huge spoiler for a would-be watcher, but they would definitely know at what point I'm talking about when they get to it. And I'm very, like I said, I'm very interested in seeing if that gets reconciled by the movie.
Excellent. That's super cool. I'm just gonna start quoting stuff from now on. There's something somebody said once. It's like in the same vein as that pacifist quote, or peaceful quote, I guess would be more accurate description of it. But it's like you have to be capable of doing things on your own, but know that working together is a lot easier to just get shit done. It's
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
that quote like it's more succinct and makes more sense. But I just broke it down in dumb guy brain. That's what it means. So I'm just gonna say what it means. But yeah, it's like of course you want to be able to do everything on your own, and if you can, that's great. But like, if the options that you have is do it poorly by yourself or do it well as a team, do it as a team every time.
It's very hard to say that at the end of season 3 that he's not working with his friends, right? There's definitely a plan, but there's a particular event that happens where he makes a decision for himself at the behest of Merlin. And there's a lot of pressure to it, and he doesn't consult anyone else about it. And that's really the event that I'm talking about. And it's not so much a getting thing done, it's rather a you should really also just soundboard with people before you do a
Right.
thing.
Yeah,
And he
yeah, check
doesn't
it.
yeah, and he doesn't do that. And then it's another instance clear again in Wizards when Jim is revisited as a character, that he's a very self-sacrificing character. Like, I think at this point I have to just accept that that's a problematically endearing trait of his where he's just very self-sacrificing.
Right.
And like I said, I hope in the movie that gets reconciled, but fingers crossed that
Yeah.
that culminates to something bigger there.
Yeah, hopefully they're calling back to that with some kind of build-up in mind. I don't know if either of you have watched the new She-Ra
Love
show.
She-Ra, and I'm rewatching it. That's also another thing I indoctrinate people to, is that I have definitely sat down and made my one of my partners watch it with me, and the other one I will be finishing it with because his ex started him with it, and I'm like, oh, we can start over.
Yeah,
we'll go through this. I'll watch this 3 times.
I'm in that zone where I need to start over because I only saw snippets of it, but I know I'd be into it for sure.
Jim and Adora could sit in a room together and talk for hours about all the times that they decided to do things without their partners and their friends and everything else. Just, oh man, they could have a blast.
Yes, that is what I was going to talk about, because I don't want to spoil anything for She-Ra either, but there's a very moving scene towards the end of the series where Adora kind of has to confront her compulsive need to kind of face things alone. And I just thought that was so well executed. And it made me really... I already was obsessed with the show from season 1.
Oh, yeah, same.
Yeah. Catra is like my comfort character.
Oh, man. I have this love-hate relationship with Glimmer because I see so much of myself in Glimmer, but goddamn if I'm watching it and it's all the parts of myself that I grew out of, and I'm like, goddamn it, Glimmer, every 5 minutes in the show.
That's how I feel with Catra and myself. And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, there's definitely some points with Catra, and I'm like, oh, you hit too deep in the feels. And then there's a few with Adora too, for sure, that I'm like, oh crap.
We're coming up on time, but I'm glad that all these shows are like they all. We're gonna have to do like these episodes on basically all of these shows.
Yeah.
Where we break down stuff and see if there's any fandom drama, just to sate my sick curiosity on why people hate each other so much. That's like the driving force behind all of our drama episodes. But we in the next episode we're gonna do 2 of these and maybe a third or a bonus episode. We'll see how it shakes out by the time the third recording starts. In the next episode we're going to talk a bit about the behind the scenes production, and a little teaser for this. If anybody knows who Anton Yelchin is, he played a character on Star Trek that I absolutely knew when I started saying this sentence, but I can't remember the name of them.
Oh my god.
Super important. He says everything with a Russian accent, which is important.
Yeah.
I'm no help here. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm clicking too many. I accidentally started up OBS and all sorts of recording stuff. Yelchin, Star Trek. Chekhov. That's it.
Chekhov.
Yeah.
That's gonna drive me crazy.
That's such a basic Russian name. I should have been able to guess it, even though I've never watched. But
it's the whole nuclear vessel thing.
Yeah.
Nuclear vessel.
Yeah, it was on time of passing. I thought he was an excellent Chekhov. Star Trek. I'll probably end up doing stuff on Star Trek at some point, just because I know a lot of cool background stuff about the show. Maybe not so much about the fandom things, but now that
I know about the fandom things, so we
know
got
about
this.
Okay, perfect. We'll do that stuff. But yes, Anton Yelchin was the voice actor for Jim, and he passed away. And we'll talk a little bit about how that affected the series.
Well, thank you guys for joining me, and thank you for educating us on Troll Hunter. Definitely gonna have to check this out, and anybody listening who hasn't seen it, come join apparently the most wholesome fandom on the internet.
Heck yeah.
Excellent. Where can we find you at, Stella? We'll put all the links in our episode description, so when it goes up on Spotify and etc., it will be up there. But where can we find you?
I actually tell fortunes and do crystal wire wrapping at my Etsy, the Stone Dragon Crafts, and I have an Instagram handle of the same name at the Stone Dragon Crafts. I also have a Facebook group that you can join where I do weekly readings that you can join in on, as well as do my kind of commissions from there as well. And so if you're into witchy and pagan stuff, I'm your girl. And that would also be by the name the Stone Dragon Horde. You can find that on Facebook by that name. They're on that group too. And yeah, come see me.
Yeah, I actually bought some runes from you, and they're very good, and they help me out with making plans for the day. It's very nice.
I'm glad. Yeah, I do rune readings and tarot. I make rune sets, so if anybody is interested in those, they're wood burnt and stained.
They're very nice.
You
They
had the
smell very
birch
good.
set. Yeah.
Yeah, the birch
I
set.
used rose water on yours. That's what I did.
I know. They still smell like it too. I keep
It's
the pack
good.
very
Oh my
tightly on
gosh.
clothes. They smell very good. Thank you, Spectrum, Midnight Laboratory, for our theme song, intro and outro. Still rocking that on the beginning and ends of this. It's such a good little bop. I love it. Do we have anybody? We don't have anybody else to thank, do we?
I think we got it.
Thank you, viewer, for watching or listening.
Thank you, Guillermo del Toro, for making such a good, wholesome series.
Yeah, thanks. What did they call him on Pacific Rim? The little girl called him something.
Totoro. It's close to Totoro.
Yeah, it was basically My Neighbor Totoro reference from the little.
Yeah, it was like My Neighbor Toro.
Yeah, it was super cute.
Yeah.
Adorable.
So we are on Spotify and Audible so far. iTunes podcast or Apple podcast, whatever they're calling it these days, is coming soon. I just gotta get smart about how I'm actually releasing stuff. I assume there's a lot more automation to it, but there's not. But we'll be on there pretty soon. And once we're on Apple, we'll be on pretty much everything else because it scoops up off Apple anyways. So thanks so much for joining us for this episode. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.